like to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. I call Aphra Brandreth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to raise the issue of mental health in farming and agricultural communities this evening and to secure a debate on this vitally important and pertinent topic. It is sadly no exaggeration to say that we have a mental health crisis in our rural and agricultural communities. In January 2021, the Royal Agricultural Benevolent Institution, the RABI, launched a large research project entitled the Big Farming Survey. The audience of this survey was 15,000 farmers, contractors and their households, with the aim of achieving a better understanding of the health and well-being of the farming community in England and Wales. The report found that the farming community has a lower than average mental well-being when compared to the wider UK population. Over a third of those who completed the survey had a mental well-being score that was significantly low to the point where it was concerning. Worryingly, a similar number said that they were probably or possibly depressed, according to NHS thresholds. I will give way.
Thank the Honourable Member for giving way and congratulate her for securing this really, really important debate. The Royal Agricultural Benevolent Institute's Big Farming Survey also found that 52% of farmers experience regular pain and discomfort, while 1 in 4 have mobility problems. So does the Honourable Member agree with me that we must recognise that physical health has an impact on mental health and ensure that the NHS, GPs and mental health services are joined up?
The Honourable Member makes an important point, and I know that she is an excellent champion for farmers in her community, and she makes a very important point on physical health. I will give way.
Congratulate the Honourable Lady for Chester South and Eddisbury for bringing this forward. I spoke to her before the debate tonight. The Ulster Farmers Union in Northern Ireland, they run every February a campaign called Mind Your Head campaign. It helps to break down the stigma attached to poor mental health in the farming sector. And why is that so important? Because research shows that 95% of young farmers in this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland have concerns for their mental health. So does the Honourable Lady feel that it's something that shouldn't be taken just for England and Wales, but should be taken across all of this great nation?
The Honourable Member makes a very important point that this is an issue that impacts every part of our union, and I will make reference to the impact for young people later in my speech also. To go back to the RABI survey, the report found that the farming community has a lower than average mental well-being when compared to the wider population. Over a third of those who completed the survey had a mental well-being score that was significantly low to the point where it was concerning. And worryingly, a similar number said that they were probably or possibly depressed. Nearly half of respondents said they were experiencing some form of anxiety, and tragically 1 in 5 of respondents knew someone who had attempted to take their own life. Let me remind the House that this survey had 15,000 responses. That is a shockingly high statistic, and I hope that the gravity of this hits home with members across the House. Since this report was launched in January 2021, things have not become any easier for farmers and the rural community. Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the consequences of this on energy and fertiliser prices and the flow of commodities such as grain and oilseeds have caused farmers a great deal of concern. Economic factors like inflation have also hit farmers hard, and like several places across the country, we in Cheshire have had a particularly bad year with regards to rainfall. These problems all compound existing challenges, thereby putting a significant strain on farmers who are already under huge pressure.
Will the Right Honourable Lady give way at that moment?
I will give way.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady for securing this debate and giving way. Just last Friday, I visited a farm in my constituency, a family farm. David ran the construction side of the business, Robert ran the farm, their sister Sharon ran the books. By any measure, this is a successful farm. They have owned the property for a long period of time. But when they spoke to me, they talked about as you said, high energy costs, high interest rates, tougher international competition, tougher regulations on pesticides and use of chemicals, a volatile climate, and then, to raise the issue of our last debate, they talked about the new rules on IHT. Is it any surprise that... Is it any surprise, would the Honourable Lady like to say, is it any surprise that many people in the farming industry feel stressed and under pressure considering the policies introduced by this government?
Brandreth.
I thank my honourable friend for raising this issue. There are a wide range of challenges that are facing the sector, and of course the decisions that the government are making will in part contribute to some of those challenges. There are some that are outside of all of our control, the weather being one example. Madam Deputy Speaker, I represent Chester South and Eddisbury, a constituency with a large rural area, and because of the nature of Cheshire's ground and topography, dairy is the predominant mode of farming locally. This brings additional challenges with the risks of animal disease outbreaks and the financial and emotional consequences that stem from such outbreaks. I would like to take a moment to share some of the very real stories that demonstrate why I have asked for this debate today, because behind every statistic there is a personal story. There are families, loved ones, friends and communities who are deeply affected. For those of us who represent rural and agricultural communities, we know that suicide among farmers is tragically high. I have sadly had examples in my own constituency, even in the short time that I have had the privilege of representing Chester South and Eddisbury, which have caused a great deal of pain to the families and the surrounding area. When something like this happens, it rocks a tight-knit community to its core, and the impact is felt by many. Only last week, I heard of a tragic incident where a daughter found her father after he had taken his own life in one of the barns on their family farm. The daughter wrote of her father in a tribute of how he worked so incredibly hard and how proud he was to have increased the acreage and yield of the family farm under his stewardship. He was immensely proud of the operation he'd built up, and his daughter summed up the vocation of farming in her online tribute. Farmers work harder and longer than most other trades and earn significantly less. We love what we do, or we wouldn't do it. We feed the nation to the best of our abilities. Madam Deputy Speaker, I cannot begin to imagine what the families of these two farmers are going through. But as I said earlier, these cases are too common, and I know that there will be other stories like these that members from right across this House will have heard in their own constituencies. I will give way.
Thank you, Lady, for giving way and for securing this important debate. And just on this vitally important issue of the tragedy of suicides amongst the farming community, I too in my constituency in North Northumberland have met several farmers who they themselves have felt the pressure of this, but the common theme is that everybody knows somebody that at some point has felt this pressure or sadly even has taken their own life. And on that point, would you agree with me that this is one issue that right across the House we should agree to support the farmers in whatever way we can?
I appreciate the comments from the Honourable Member, and I'm sorry to hear about the tragic instances in his constituency, and we very much need to be collaborative to improve things for the farming community. And I will give way.
Thank the Honourable Lady very much for securing this debate, and I wonder if she would join with me in paying tribute to the farmer-initiated and farmer-led organisations such as We Are Farming Minds in my constituency of North Herefordshire for doing such important work in supporting their colleagues in the farming sector and tackling head-on these mental health challenges.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for mentioning some of the excellent organisations, and I will note some of them later on in my speech also. It is for all of these reasons that this debate and the actions and commitments from ministers are so important. An often overlooked group when we talk about rural mental health is women, in particular young women. There are inspiring examples of women who run farms and contribute a great deal to the agricultural sector. There are also, of course, almost always women involved in a farming operation, if not always hands-on in the yards or fields.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will give way.
Thank you very much for giving way, and you're making a very powerful, the Honourable Lady is making a very powerful point about this. When I visited Pierpont Farm in my constituency, which has just been taken over by a new female young farmer, she was saying to me about the stresses and problems that she is facing. But it's not just young women, it's families as well. Matthias Nurseries in my constituency equally have this problem. So this issue that she's talking about covers both the established family farms and the new younger generation as well, and the policies that the new government is bringing about is hitting both equally. Does she not agree that we need to look after both our young new female farmers and our established families as well?
Absolutely. We know that mental health issues impact people across the community, and not just directly individuals who are affected, but those around that person too. And the RABI survey found that women aged 24 to 35 had the worst mental health scores across the sample. So I would ask the Minister to think about how this can be addressed within policy and how we can raise awareness for the mental health challenges facing all those in farming and rural communities. I'd like to stress that there are some wonderful organisations, locally and nationally, that work hard to support our rural and agricultural communities and provide support for mental well-being. I want to mention again the RABI and the role they play in supporting farmers, and others such as the Farming Community Network or Yellow Wellies and their Mind Your Head project, which help farmers when they need it most. But these organisations, as good as they are not the long-term solution, nor can they find and prevent every tragic consequence and occurrence of suicide in the rural community. Any good doctor will tell you that prevention is better than a cure. The cause of a significant amount of stress for farmers, particularly recently, has been government policy. Later on in my remarks, I will give way.
I'm very grateful to the honourable member. I've just got off the telephone to one of my constituents from Yarcombe in Devon. He's a tenant farmer and he's particularly anxious about agricultural property relief and the proposed changes from the government around inheritance tax. Does she think too that this is an absolutely appalling proposition?
I thank the honourable member for sharing that. I think that the impact of APR will be felt right across the community, and unfortunately in a community that is struggling with mental health, it is an extra blow. I'll later offer some thoughts as to how we might better prevent mental health problems in the first instance, but I want to briefly mention a few of the other reasons why mental health issues are disproportionately higher in rural areas. Firstly, there is the issue of isolation. It is multifaceted and can be attributed to literal isolation, living in sparsely populated areas far from the nearest village, digital isolation without broadband or mobile coverage, and physical isolation from a lack of transport links, an issue keenly felt in my constituency, where many rural areas have little or no public transport connections. A mixture of these forms of isolation mean that people in rural areas, like farmers, often suffer from loneliness. It is not easy to go to the local pub or cafe to talk to friends and neighbours when you live in the countryside. It's harder to get to these places, but also harder to make time to socialise due to the demands of farming. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is also the issue of rural reticence. Again, there has historically been a stigma surrounding mental health, and whilst we've made good progress in breaking down the barriers and encouraging people to talk, sadly there remains a reticence within rural and agricultural communities to talk about problems and feelings. This is not because of hubris or arrogance, but rather the "I'll manage myself" culture comes from a desire not to burden neighbours and friends who are also in the community and will no doubt be facing the same challenges. I'm confident that we can do more as a society to break down this barrier and encourage farmers to talk honestly and openly with each other. I will give way.
I'm extremely grateful to Honourable Lady. She personifies the Conservative commitment to farms and farming. She does so with style and acumen. The issue of fear she described is exacerbated by the way in which farmers now face their suppliers. Supermarkets are ruthless in the way they deal with farmers, and this is the fear that dare not speak its name. Our farmers can't speak, for those are the people to whom they sell their goods. Will she implore the government to take a tougher line with the sharp practice of the big retailers and the effect it has on farmers?
Well, my honourable friend always makes such pertinent points, and I know how importantly he feels about issues surrounding food security, and he works extremely hard to highlight the challenges that farmers face, and particularly the issues of making sure that they get fair price from suppliers. They are facing challenges from all around them. I wanted to also make the point that mental health problems are more prevalent in agricultural communities because of the volatility of farming. Farmers don't enjoy the luxury of stability and are vulnerable to shocks such as adverse weather and flooding, health issues within herds such as bovine TB, and economic problems. That's why agricultural policy ought to create stability, not more uncertainty for farmers. But I'll speak more about that shortly, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are many reasons as to why rural mental health is disproportionately worse, but I hope that the three mentioned above give the House an idea of why I have called for this debate today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to make three asks of the government, and I hope that the Minister will be receptive and commit to working alongside colleagues from across the House and within government to make some real progress. My first request is that the government take an integrated approach to this issue. I would humbly suggest to the Minister that this has been an issue with recent government policy, particularly in relation to the agricultural property relief. Yes. DEFRA ministers should have been in the room when the decision to change APR was made. If ministers were in the room, then their priority and plea to the Treasury should have been the impact that it would have on family farms, food security and the local economy. DEFRA ministers should also be involved in many cross-governmental discussions. We need to see a joined-up approach whereby farmers and the rural community are consistently represented by ministers who have their best interests at heart. Only then can we hope to see a policy that does not cause the agricultural community more concern, leading to further uncertainty and exacerbating existing challenges. The decision on APR has once again brought rural mental health to the forefront. We have heard of too many tragic stories in the papers, and I hope that this is a wake-up call to the government that they must start taking rural policy seriously and not see farmers as a community to exploit. My second ask of the Minister is that a specific strategy be put in place for young people who live in rural communities. We know that the statistics show a significant uptick in mental health problems among young people, particularly after the pandemic. But many of the problems that I outlined as compounding factors that make rural mental health worse are even more prominent issues when it comes to younger people. Research conducted by Yellow Wellies shows that 95% of young farmers, those under 40, believe that mental health is the biggest hidden problem facing farmers today. This is again a shockingly high statistic. We also know that there is a shortage of young people entering the agricultural sector, very often driven by the isolation of rural areas and the lack of opportunity. If we want the countryside to thrive and farming to be a successful and attractive sector, we must do more to support young people. And an important part of that is making sure their mental health is in as good a place as it can be. So I would ask the Minister to reassure the House that this will be a priority for him going forward, and whether he would meet with me and some representatives from the Cheshire Young Farmers Club to discuss how DEFRA can better understand the mental health pressures on young people in rural areas. My final ask, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that we must make sure that farmers are at the centre of policy decisions that relate to rural areas and the agricultural sector. The ask is simple, but very necessary. When the government is formulating policy, I urge them to think of the implications and consequences that it will have. I would ask them to think about the motivations behind the policy and remind themselves of the motivations behind our farmers' work. They are motivated by service to our country, by providing food and caring for our countryside, and they are motivated by being a part of their local community, supporting friends and family, and working to support the local economy. Farmers are part of the fabric of our country, the backbone of local economies and stalwarts in our communities. So when ministers feed into policy, I ask that they remember this and reflect the values of the rural and agricultural communities. If ministers do this, I think we can go a long way to improving mental health in these areas that are so desperately needed. Thank you.
Yeah. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Lady for introducing this very serious debate in such a calm, measured way, which befits the seriousness of the subject. And let me start by extending my sincere condolences to all those in recent times who've lost loved ones and their friends, their families and their communities, because every suicide is a tragedy. Every one has a devastating and enduring impact on families and friends. And I absolutely recognise that farmers face challenges on many, many fronts, and we will do everything we can to safeguard the mental health of people working in the sector. Now, in recent years, there has been a growing awareness of the importance of mental health in the sector, which I absolutely welcome. I very much agree with her comments about the impact on women, and we will continue to work with the full range of farming charities. And I'd particularly thank, and I echo her comments, about some of the amazing organisations such as the Farming Community Network, the Royal Agricultural Benevolent Institution and others. And I very much recognise the points about the survey, and indeed I think the Honourable Lady from Glastonbury and Somerton and I were on a panel discussing this very issue with Yellow Wellies last year. So we're absolutely committed to supporting the mental health and well-being of our farmers, and in coming weeks I'll be inviting charities and other stakeholders with expertise in this area to discuss how we can grow a better national support system for farmers. Now, I don't have much time, so I won't go into a whole range of detail, but quite clearly, when there are extreme weather events such as flood, when there is the pressure of disease, quite clearly that puts additional and extra stress on people, and we fully appreciate that. So we will continue to seek out opportunities to seek out ways of supporting people. And today, I've agreed to continue the funding for the Farming Community Network, which supports bovine tuberculosis affected communities, by putting in place a 3-year contract starting from the 1st of December. Now, that support began back in 2009, and it provides TB affected farmers and their families with a national free-to-access business and pastoral advice service. I think it's been successful, and we are very pleased to continue it. Furthermore, we're continuing to provide funding for several organisations which will deliver projects to address these issues. The Farming Community Network, Lincolnshire Rural Support Network, the Farmer Network, and You Are Not Alone are all in receipt of funding this year. And we'll continue to work with third sector organisations to keep delivering support into the future. Now, on suicide prevention, we're working across government to improve mental health and access to services, and I pay tribute to everyone who's working to raise awareness and encourage those who are struggling to reach out for help. Absolutely, we recognise the points about isolation and that difficulty in asking for help. So we're giving mental health the same attention and focus as physical health. We want everyone to be confident of accessing high-quality mental health support when they need it. And I'm very pleased that we've announced we will recruit 8,500 new mental health workers who will be trained particularly to support people at risk of suicide. And the £10 million Suicide Prevention Grant Fund, which runs until March 2025, continues to provide funding for a range of voluntary and community organisations to support their work on suicide prevention. Now, turning to loneliness and isolation, again a point that the Honourable Lady made very well. Suicide is a complex, multifaceted issue, and I absolutely know that loneliness and isolation are particular risk factors for people in rural areas, such as farmers and agricultural workers. And we are absolutely committed to tackling loneliness, including providing advice on loneliness as part of the Better Health Every Mind Matters campaign. The Department for Culture, Media and Sport is also supporting organisations which can play a role in reducing loneliness stigma, amongst many in particular, through the Tackling Loneliness Hub. This is an online platform that connects professionals from across sectors working to reduce loneliness. So let me conclude by again thanking the Honourable Lady for bringing this important subject to the attention of the House. I'm very happy to.
I appreciate the constructive comments that the Minister is making and some of the policies that he raises that he's put in place. Will he, as I noted about wanting to raise the importance of the impact on young people in the farming industry, meet with me and Cheshire young farmers to make sure that they can hear firsthand and put questions to him about that issue?
Well, I very much welcome her commitment to supporting young people. It's certainly one of my passions to make sure that we can transform the system to make it easier for young people to come into farming and to prosper. I'm on I think, perpetual tour of the country, and I'm sure that I can find a time and an opportunity to meet her and her young people, and I shall look forward to doing that. Let me conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, by saying the Government's committed to supporting farmers and agricultural workers to access the support they need to protect their own mental health and well-being. We will work to tackle loneliness and isolation in rural areas, and we will ensure provision of high-quality, accessible mental health support. We are absolutely determined to support farmers as they do their vital work, producing food and looking after nature and the environment.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Order, order.